fix this, and you're just like, I'm going to destroy everything.
So did you guys have any questions about the homework other than the fact that you can't just tweak the MSTC app or anything that we did like from last week? Navigation stuff, okay. Right.
Are you recording already?
Yep, I am.
Okay.
I saved my story for you.
But I would like to mention, I don't know if you've seen the NFL power rankings lately. Number 1.
They went to number 1.
Vikes are ranked number 1 now, yeah.
The curse.
It's a jinx, yes.
It's
I'd rather they were not, but they are.
You were a Vikings fan.
Hmm?
Yeah, but it's a curse.
Yeah, it's a jinx to be rated number 1, because then you got nowhere to go but down.
You get rated that high this early in the season, everybody's trying to knock you off.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so we did the drop the ball app last week. We had the slider control and the segmented control. So that was cool. This week, we'll take it up a notch. We're going to start working, we'll do a tab bar app, and then within the tab bar app, we're going to work on different variations of the picker control. We'll start off with a date picker, which is the simplest form of a picker control, and then work our way up from there. Hi, Glenn. Just in time.
Will you work on this sheet?
Yeah, is it done yet?
I don't know. I can't get into it.
So are we working on the drop the ball app or something?
With it.
Nope, we're working on something entirely different.
You didn't try that.
I'm going to give Glenn a minute to
No, I
help
didn't.
out, whatever.
Okay.
I couldn't type something wrong.
It's working on updating that code. I've been working out all afternoon on those 3 computers.
Yeah, thank you.
So I heard.
Great socialist.
Yeah, thank you for your diligence on that.
All afternoon.
Thank you.
That's welcome to the wonderful world of Apple. So yeah, I just started recording and mentioned what we're going to be doing tonight, which is working on a tab bar app. So let's we can go ahead and get started on that. Does everyone now have, other than perhaps you, Christine, you probably don't. Is everyone else on Xcode 8.0? Well, no, that's all right. That's good. All right. And Christine, if you're not, you will be shortly. So I think everything that we're going to do, other than a couple things, will be backwards compatible. Where it's not, I'll let you know. All right. So first thing, let's create a new Xcode project with Xcode open.
I should ask, now that operating system Sierra is
Yes.
available, are we going to need to upgrade to that?
It would be good to do. I upgraded my MacBook and it was relatively painless. So I've experienced problems in the past. I didn't with Sierra, so yeah, I would go ahead and do it. It's best just to try and stay current with all their stuff. They should be done with their barrage of updates for a little while now, so for at least a couple of weeks, hopefully.
Should we wait until after class to update that?
Nah, well, yeah, don't do it now, but
But that one should be one you can do right before you walk out the door.
Yep. I mean, that one's not as critical as Xcode, but it is. It's not bad. It's a good thing to keep up.
I might have to restart because it said I couldn't do it without logging off other users. So I'll restart the computer.
All right. So for tonight, we'll select the tabbed application. So this will present views, view controllers actually, in a series of tabs, and go next. And let's see, we'll call this pick and old playoff of a show or something. All right, so MSTC is our organization. Sure. Because we're going to be using the picker control, so I can name it something else. Let's see.
Oh, you're fine.
It's fine, I was making sure it's
All right. Oh, okay. Yeah, granted.
Picking and grinding.
No,
Grinning.
we're recording right now, so.
We've gone to the south. Picking and grinning, they don't believe in cheese.
What do you mean? Grinning starts with a G.
Yep. All right, well, we'll make it more grammatically correct for Adam's sake. Picking and grinning.
It's all about the cheese.
No, those are little. Those are little G's. They're little G's.
I like cheese.
All right. Everything else should be good. No unit tests. So then go next, and pick a spot to save it. And it'll take a little while to make this bad boy. Oh, not too bad. All right. So what we end up with, once this is all said and done, I'm going to let it finish indexing, and okay. Now I'm going to go into the main storyboard. The main storyboard. Yeah, eventually, once the psychedelic wheel of death gets done. Be prepared to be amazed. Look at all this happiness that's happening here. All right, so now, once you're all loaded up, ready to go, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. You will notice that some fun and fantastic things have happened in your storyboard. By picking a tab bar controller app, you end up with this guy right here, which is a tab bar controller. A tab bar controller is another form of navigation controller. So it works like the navigation controller. It itself is derived from a view controller, but it has special characteristics to it. But you'll notice that it is the initial view controller. It's checked over there. So this is the first thing that the application starts up as the tab bar controller. Then the tab bar controller builds out the individual view controllers. So we have two of those guys out of the box, first and second view controller. So I'm going to go ahead and run this because we might as well just get the pain of starting up the simulator out of the way. Oh, I don't want this on a, I don't want it on a 7 Plus though. It's going to be huge. I'll go with a 5S. And starting up, I'll go over some stuff. So when we have navigation controllers or different forms of navigation, we either have a programmatic way of doing it or we can do it through the storyboard. In this case, we're doing it through the storyboard. And these guys, these arrows that point to the view controllers, are what's called a segue. So the tab bar controller uses these segues under the hood to navigate to swappers. And then in the view controller, or in the tab controller, it builds out these tab bar items. So each one of the view controllers is going to have a tab bar item on the bottom of it, and those are indexed. So we're still loading. They even give you little pre-made icons and stuff, although they're kind of generic. It's amazing how slow that is. You'll also notice that in your scene guide over here, all 3 of the scenes are included, including the tab bar controller scene. And in here it has, down here are the relationships, which are these segue guys. They call them relationships now, but that so these are relationship segues that go from one to the other.
So if you were to accidentally delete one of those, you'd be in trouble.
Yeah, but by doing a control. Yeah, once they've built them out, it's best to kind of leave them alone. I mean, you're not really in trouble, but things can go wrong anytime you got to recreate these things. Has anyone got theirs up and running yet?
Yeah.
All right. So you can see then you end up with a screen that has the two icons on the bottom, right? You should have the two icons on it. You should have the first and second, and then if you tap on one of them, it'll take you to that view controller. And then you should see the labels that they have created for you. First view and second view. That was so fast I almost missed it. All right, so I'm on the first right now, so by default it goes to the first. If you tap on the second, it takes to the second, and it's just magic. All right, so it's swapping out view controllers when it does that. So in our code over here, you'll see that you have a first view controller and a second view controller generated as well. So it's created the storyboard UI, and it's also built out the back-end code to support it. So what we're going to do, well, first thing I'm going to do is go into my main storyboard. These guys here are accessible. If you want to modify the tab bar, what you have to do is go into the individual view controller and click on it, and it is selectable, as evidenced by the fact it's highlighted in blue. You can't get at it directly from the actual tab bar controller, you just got to go into the individual view controllers. And when I do that, over here is information if you have the attribute inspector selected. You have information about the tab bar items. So each tab bar controller presents a tab bar, which is the overall bar that goes across the bottom, and then within the tab bar are tab bar items. So the little circle that says first, that's actually a tab bar item. So if you were to access that through code, it would be tab bar controller .tab bar item. What we can do here is these badges are what gets displayed. You can change this, you can swap these out. Right now it's set to a custom, this guy that they added into. So like in our assets over here, there's their first and second icons for the tab bar controller that they've added into the app for us. But they're ugly and boring, so what we can do, the theme of our app tonight, picking and grinning, is we're going to work with the date controller first. So that guy's going to be in our first view controller. So if you come down to the system item here and click on that, you notice there's some options there that are built in. They're actually OS options. One of them is history. So if I select that, you'll notice that the icon changes on the tab bar to the clock, and then it says history on it. That's something you can't modify. That's a system one. You can also use your own icons. Like that's what they did when we started it up. They just created the circle and square. But we'll use history for the first view controller because we're dealing with dates. And then on the second one, this one's going to be a single column view controller. So I will just go with favorites. Okay, favorites is another pre-selected built-in type. All right, so then now if you run it, you'll notice that those have changed in your tab bar. So the tab bar controller is a handy item. It is a non-sequential type of navigation. So in other words, if you use a navigation controller, somehow you programmatically do your navigation. A navigation controller is usually based on the concept of you do one thing, you finish that, and then you go on to another screen. So it's in a sequence. Whereas the tab bar controller, you can really go to anything at any time. You don't have to complete one or the other to go to the other one. So it's you can have 3, 4, 5 of these tabs if you want, and they all can be opened at any time by the user. If you are limiting access to them, you can limit them so that they can't access them, but then that's probably an indication to go with a different type of navigation other than tab bar, because that's not really the intended use of a tab bar, to limit navigation. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go into our first view controller here. Nice as this label is, we're not going to need it, so I'm going to delete this guy. If you select it, you can just hit the delete key and delete that out. This one, this can be kind of like a copyright thing. I'm just going to move them down open right now. Move them out of the way. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, we're going to get right to the cut to the chase here. I'm going to look for a date picker. So this guy's over in your object library, somewhere a ways down. Date picker, there he is. So below the date picker is the picker view. We're going to deal with him a little bit later on, but for right now we're going to deal with the date picker. So the date picker is a special kind of picker view. You can drag that over and drop it on your first view controller. So the date, all the pickers are the wheels that you see. You can spin and select stuff. So the date picker is a special kind of picker view that is got a lot of logic built into it by Apple that handles just dates. But it also means that a lot of the stuff that you'd normally have to wire up yourself, they've already done for you. So as we go on and we do get into the picker views, you'll see what I'm talking about. But the picker control, the date picker is kind of a handy little guy. So anyway, with him on there, what we'll do is do a control drag to center it horizontally. Here we go, fun with constraints. I hear groans.
Horizontal constraints.
Yeah, you just want to drag down and center it horizontally. And then, so that centers it horizontally in there. And then the other thing we'll do is a control drag upwards and set the vertical spacing. And that will select and edit that, set that manually to be, say, like about 60, I'd say would be good. All right, and then now that we have constraints set, let's go ahead and create a variable for this guy. So I'm going to click on my assistant editor, and he came up with the first view controller. Yay! All right, so do a control drag from the date picker over to the first view controller, and that is an outlet type. We'll call it DTPicker. Type is DatePicker. That's all good.
And is it an outlet you said?
Pardon?
It's an outlet, not an
Yep,
action?
that's an outlet. Yep.
What do you call that?
I just call it DTPicker or DatePicker, abbreviated DatePicker. All right, so now you can go ahead and run it again. Hopefully our constraints didn't move it completely off the screen. The label might not be visible. If that's the case, that's fine. I'm not worried about the label. So picker controls are used all over the place in iOS. They're pretty common. And so you can see if you spin it, you know, it'll makes a neat little sound.
The label is gone.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the label. In fact, we can just delete it right off there. So these are actually in a picker control, any picker control. These guys that you spin are individual columns. They're actually called components when you get into the code, but individual columns, and then each one of the selections going across is a row. So each component has its own row that it can select. All right, beautiful. Going into the date picker, if you select it, it will have different properties you can set on it. You can set date and time, just date, just time, or even a countdown timer. I'm going to change it from date and time to be date. And when you do that, it should change in your storyboard to reflect that change. Because when you start getting the time element in there, it complicates things a bit. I'm also going to delete that label. We really don't need the label. It doesn't. It's gone anyway.
This label, the one at the bottom.
Yep, just the little label at the bottom. Just delete it. And so now we just have our date picker, which has a variable. Let's also, well, before we do that, I'm going to slide this guy over. Let's do this. Let's put in edit control on there, a text field. And move him down below the date picker. And I'll size it up a bit. All right, and then we're going to want to center that horizontally. Now, this is the tricky part, so we don't end up with all of our objects whacked. I think the easiest way to do this is going to be to verticalize it. Set it vertically with the bottom of the phone. So I'm going to control drag down with it. Set the vertical spacing to bottom guide. And I'll set that to like about 100 or so. I think that should give us enough room for the picker control and the edit control. And then in the, so now with that edit control, you might remember that has a placeholder property, so we can put text in there. I'm going to put enter date. So we're going to use this two ways, this edit control. When the date gets spun and it lands on a specific date, we are going to set the date. We're going to actually display the date in a readable, user-readable format in this edit box. And then if they type a date into the edit box, we're going to set the picker control to that date. So it's going to work both ways.
So you're doing entering the data on the placeholder. What is that under?
Pardon me?
Where did you find the placeholder? I apologize.
Oh, if you select the edit box, the text box guy, and then over here in the attributes, there's a placeholder under the text field. Unless it's got to be a text field. So if you have like a label or a text view, maybe. Yeah,
And how do you set the value of the constraints?
I have a question.
You first.
There's a few questions. All right, Nate's first. Oh, yeah, how do you set the constraints?
Yeah,
Well, you do the center horizontal one like you always do. You just click and control drag down and then set center horizontally.
right. I was trying to figure out how to set like
Vertical.
the you know, where you type in the numbers of what you want. What do we set that as?
This is, oh, what type it is? This is,
No, click
Did
on
you click on the line?
the yellow line.
yep,
And then 100 was what we
Okay.
said.
yep.
I changed mine to 200 so it would go right underneath the date picker. Otherwise it's down quite a ways.
You gotta be that'll the one thing you gotta be careful with that is like with different size phones, you may end up with it like rammed into the date picker. So that's fine. I mean, you know, you can do that. We're not really too worried about doing cross-device functionality right now. So as long as it looks good.
When you clicked on it, you got a placeholder?
Yeah, if you click on it should be, if it's a text view or a label, you won't get that. But if it's a text field up here in the, the attributes inspector selected down 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 places down, should be a placeholder. Yep. So I just enter date there because that's where the user will enter a date. And then I'm going to run them again. Make sure that the edit field shows up okay. Oh yes, Isaiah, you had a question.
On my main storyboard, the date picker disappeared, but when I run it, it still shows up.
That's interesting. That's the opposite of what usually happens.
But I can't see.
You can't work on the storyboard. How about if you change your size of your view controller to, instead of being like a specific phone size, just change it to any. It might be like off and never land, but so if you set your size to freeform,
We'll check the game.
What would be if mine shows up when it runs like really short in length, even though I have it probably longer than you, about the same?
you mean the date field?
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't have a text in it
The
and it's
text
really
box?
small.
It looks like it almost resized it to what we have as a placeholder. 'Cause mine I have quite wide and it's shortened it up.
Hold on just a second. I got to get rid of this.
Like, see,
By the way,
mine
this-
Alright.
doesn't even have text in it.
So yours is tiny.
It's just
It's, yeah, it's not even a complete square, it's just like a bracket on the top and a bracket on the bottom.
You gotta love Apple. What we'll have to do is set a width constraint on it, probably.
Okay.
No doubt. Okay, so what were you saying? You gonna say something, Isaiah?
I can click on it, like, on the left, like on that list, like where all the stuff is.
Yeah.
And it shows up like an outline, an orange
Oh, I
outline,
got one of
where
those.
it used to be, but I can't like click on it all. It's just not there, like a blank.
So that's pretty sweet.
yes.
I'd stop it and just delete it and re-add it. See if you can re-add it. I'm not sure why that is, but generally speaking, if something gets whacked like that, I just recreate it. So it's just, I'll give you a couple minutes, but it's just a couple things you got to do. When you first drop it on there, make sure you line it up with the blue guides, and then hopefully it won't like go into Neverland.
Alright, I put 100 width on it and now it's there, so.
Yeah, that's what you got to do, because they've gotten just nuts with their constraints. So now it's like, if you set a constraint on it vertically, then sometimes it'll shrink it way down. So then you just, set a width. Did you have to set a height constraint as well?
I didn't.
Okay, good. As long as it stays there. So what you'll have to do probably to make this thing the width that you want is select it and do a control drag inside the edit field and set width. And it didn't set. There we go.
Which option do you want selected then?
No, you have to stay within the thing, it'll just be width.
Yep.
Control.
Yeah, you gotta stay inside the control and set width. It'll probably be the only one they offer you.
And then we can set that to whatever.
100 and something, so I figured.
Did you get yours to recreate okay, Isaiah?
Yeah, and then where did you set what's inside like the text field to start out with?
For the picker or for the text field?
Placeholder?
The placeholder, yeah.
Click on the text box.
Okay.
All right, so it looks like the width did the trick, so that's good.
And then if we wanted to center interdate, how hard is that?
It's not hard. If you select it, there's a text alignment property over here, and you can set it to center, which then centers it.
Where's the text again?
Right above where you had the placeholder, if there's an alignment option. Okay, then, okay, so cool. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to trap when the date picker stops or when it's actually selected something so that then we can modify our text box. So we can set a date and then it'll appear down here. All right, so let's go ahead. Well, first of all, is everyone caught up? Okay. Alrighty. Good, good, good. So then the next thing we want to do is come over here, select our date picker again, do the control drag over like we did for the outlet, only this time we're going to create an action. And we're going to call this DP value changed. And change it from any object to UI date picker. And that looks good.
UI DatePicker?
Yep.
I have UI text field?
Then you probably selected the text field instead of the date picker. Okay, so now, again, keeping in mind that our date picker is a control that's embedded in our view. So if you look over here on the hierarchy of stuff, date picker is inside the view, which is the viewable rectangle that we look at. And that is inside the view controller. Now we're coding up the action event in the view controller because the controller is kind of like the controller, but it is acting as a delegate. Now I mentioned that word delegate because it's going to come up a lot. It is a delegate to handle the action of the event that this changed values. When we get into the picker controllers, the picker views, those guys, we have to actually set up a delegate manually. We have to wire that up ourselves. So I'm just kind of giving you like a heads up on it. All right. We should also, before we go any further, we should probably create a variable for our text field. So I'm going to do a control drag from that. And let's see, that'll be txt date. Okay, so now inside our, I'm going to slide this over a little bit. Inside of our method or action for the value change, now we have to go crazy with some some coding. So first thing that we're going to do is get the value out of the date picker. So I'm going to create a variable for that. And that is simply the sender's date value. Now, like in C# and just about every other language in the world, there's a very simple way of getting like a string, a formatted string from a date object or a date time object. Usually it's like date object dot format string or format or toString or something like that. As you might expect, Apple has no such thing. So to do it with Apple, you have to create a second type of object. This guy is going to be, I'm going to use another very meaningful variable name, df. This is a date formatter with just an empty constructor. That's all it is. So the date formatter is the object that is responsible for taking a date and formatting it how you would like it to look. So you construct one of these guys, and this actually with Swift is much, much better than it used to be with Objective-C. With Objective-C, to just simply format out a long date string, be like 30 lines of code, but it's gotten much better. Still have to use a separate object, but it's not that bad. So the next thing you have to do was with the date formatter is to set the desired format on it. So there's a date format property of the date formatter. And in here, this is just simply a string that we're going to format out. And the string, you guys might have worked with this maybe if you've done anything with C# date objects or JavaScript. But this is a specifier that tells it the format that you want the date to appear in. So big M's are months. So you can say 3 big M's is like, for example, October would be Oct, a space, so a space between the month, the day value, which would be 2 D's. So like if it's the 8th, it'd be 0/8.
Little ones, what do you do if you do big ones?
I don't know if it'll recognize it. The reason you have big M's is because there's minutes. So when you're formatting date and time, the little m is a minute and the big M is a month. And then years are also like that. So you can do 4 years or 4 digits. So now that we have a date format and we have a date object, we can create a string. And this will be df. This used to be a different method. I think it's string now. Yep. date formatter dot string, and then the date you pass in is just the date that we got from the picker control. And then we can say our text box date dot text is equal to that date. Oops. And so now, if that's wired up correctly, then it gets done spinning. We should have a date displayed in our text box.
I tried to big double D's, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, good. Always the rebel. Just kidding. All right. So SEP 24, 2031.
It's August 237th.
Fun.
I'm not sure what D did, but it put it to
3 digits.
I only need 2. 16 is equal to 228, so that's gotta be it's gotta be like a hexadecimal or
Well, you did what? You did 3. You did 3 little, or 3 big D's rather.
no, I did 2.
2. 2 big D's.
One is 213, so I don't know what that is.
It's just like whatever number I want to put.
I don't know what they're asking for, so here you go.
So we do know now that it should be little d.
All right. And if you change this to 4 M's instead of just 3,
It wasn't a question, that was a feedback.
that should give us the long month format. So instead of Oct, it should be October. Yep. So that works. Then you can also change like the number of days. Like if I wanted to, I could move this.
Can you do 2-letter or 2-digit years?
Yep, you can do that too. So what I'm doing now is I'm changing it to a long day format, which is 4 Ds, I think. So it should say like Tuesday, October, you know. I will see what that does. October 2016. Or it may blow up, or it may do something weird like yours did. Yeah, it doesn't do what I want it to do. All right. There's a format that allows you to do that, but I don't want to dive too deeply into date formatting. I just want to give you the concept of how you create one and how you display it. I'm going to put a comma after my days. And then, yeah, you can do 2 years if you want, and then it should be like 16. All right, so that does that the way it's supposed to. All right. So the next thing we want to do, that takes care of that part. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to change the background color of my view just because the text field doesn't really stick out real well, especially when there's nothing in it. So I'm going to go back into my storyboard and go into my view controller. And we've done this programmatically in the past, but you can also do this through the storyboard designer. If you select the view, set the background color, I'll go with another. So here's our RGB setter. Gives you a preview on the bottom. Oh yeah, that one's kind of cool, like a steel blue. You can set that to whatever you want. I'm just setting it so that it's some other color than white so that the text field sticks out a little bit more. Gives a little bit of contrast. Yes? kind of giddy tonight. Have you started? When does the popcorn come in anyway?
November 10th, that week.
Beautiful. If you go to your second tab, that should still be the second view. We haven't messed around with that yet. All right, so we have that. That's great. Next thing we want to do is we want to set it up so that they can type something in here if they want, and then that will automatically adjust the date picker to correspond to the date that they type in. All right, so do that. What we'll want to do is this should be like a kind of like a review of what we did early on in the class. We have to, and this is the delegate concept coming out here. We have to make our view controller a UI text field delegate, not a teased field. There we go, text field delegate. Then, in our view did load, we have to tell the UI view controller that the text field's delegate is itself. So it's txt date dot delegate is equal to us. And then that'll wire up the functions that are available to us from the text field. So now with the user entering date information, there's a bazillion ways to do that. So what we should probably do to simplify validation stuff is just simply change our keyboard. So I'm going to go over to the storyboard file, select the text date guy, and bring up the properties. And over here in the text field properties, there's a keyboard type. It's set to default by default. So I'm going to change this to be numbers and punctuation. So that way they can type in like a date, number slash, or number comma, or number dot, but they can't type in crazy stuff, like the first of Pepsi or something like that. It has to be actual valid date. Or, at 2020. All right. So that sets up the keyboard type. Then we have to wire up the methods that intercept keyboard events. So like when they hit the enter key and that kind of stuff, we can get that, we can trap that event. So we will need to, actually since we're a delegate, we don't need to actually do any event stuff with the storyboard. What we can do is in our code, if you start typing the word text, what we're looking for is text field should return. So that's when they hit the return key. And that's what we're going to intercept and handle. And this is where we have to do our conversion from what they typed into a format the picker control will understand. I'm going to just type in return true. So get rid of the compiler error. Okay. First thing we want to do is we want to do the end editing trick. That forces the keyboard to go away. All right, so we could just borrow the code that we have up here, but there's a few things, there's enough things that are going to change that it's not going to do us much good. So what we can do is create a string from what they entered. So we get the text out of the text field to start with. Then we're going to do like we did up here. We're going to do to make sure that the code is separated, because this is going to be a different date format than the one we create up there. and create a date formatter. A line that we need to add in that's very important. This allows the date format to be a little bit off. It's called isLenient. And that is a settable property. So what that says is if it's not exactly right, don't blow up, don't throw an exception, try and figure it out, basically. Then we're going to also tell it, there's another property on the date formatter that is the date style. So we did the date format. This is a date style. And there's various styles. We are going to select the dot short. So that is the 10/10/2016 type. It's the short date format as opposed to typing out in letters. Okay. Now the next thing we can do now is we can do the reverse of what we did before. Instead of creating a string from a date, now we can create a date from a string. So we can do this is DT new. Again, I'm just trying to separate the code. Let DT new equals fm.date. And there's a date from string method there. That's what I'm going to pick. And of course the string is the sDate we just got. Oops. So that creates an actual date object. And then, I think we need an exclamation point in here, probably. Okay. Then with that, we can, if all is well, we can set that into our date picker. So we say the name of our date picker is DatePicker. Only thing is, it's not a property, it's actually a method still. It's called setDate. And the date is DTNew. And animated is true, so you can see the wheels go around. And we need another exclamation point in there. All right. Should be all we need. We'll see what happens. I just thought of something I should have in my text box. All right, so I'm going to go 10, 10, 20, 10. And it spins. Okay.
Is it?
I think I restarted.
Might as well.
Huh?
Yeah.
Logging this week.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I'll let you know.
Yes.
Yeah, mine's doing the same kind of crazy thing. It broke.
You broke it.
It broke.
What'd you do?
Mine is just
I kept clicking. It broke.
Yeah, another thing I noticed, there's a couple of things wrong with it still. We should have a means of clearing out the text that's in there.
Try to put a slash.
And then the keyboard obscures everything. So Glenn's idea of actually putting it as close to the picker control as possible is a good one.
You can't see it, right?
Yep, it goes away.
the enter on the keyboard doesn't work.
Yeah, so that guy is handled in the end
Is that the
editing.
controls that says auto enable return key?
Yep, you can set that. That should, between that and the end editing, that should solve it. but I'm gonna want to move that guy. Let's see. So I'm gonna change my constraint on my picker control, my vertical constraint to be about 40. And then change this guy to be about 200. Hopefully that gives us enough room. The other thing we want to do is we want to add a clear button to our edit field so that they don't have to backspace up.
That didn't enable the enter.
Right, that worked. I think then there must be something. Are you getting into this code the text field should return?
What do you mean?
Is it actually getting into that method?
I don't know.
Put a breakpoint in there and then when run it and see if it goes in there once you hit the return key.
The first time I ran it, my keyboard came up and I was able to hit done on that. But the second time I ran it, the keyboard isn't coming up.
You may have the hardware. Do you have the keyboard on your hardware menu for your simulator? Do you have the Connect hardware keyboard unchecked?
I've got to check.
That should be unchecked.
Uncheck.
Yeah, because then that will force that keyboard to come up.
Here's yours.
Okay, now with hitting the done on the keyboard, it does go into that.
Okay. Well, I would think then if it's getting into that method, then it should, when you get done with it, it should return and move the keyboard out. That's right. I'm going to try a different date format.
Yes, but the
Yeah, it works.
enter on the
I don't think
keyboard
you
didn't
put, like,
work.
The keyboard doesn't work? Oh, on your hardware keyboard?
Yeah,
No, it won't. You either have to do one or the other.
okay. But I mean, when I had the hardware keyboard checked, it wasn't working.
When you have, so with this guy, so yeah, it won't go away because it never comes up. If you have the Connect hardware keyboard unchecked, it should come up, and then when you hit the return here on the software keyboard, it should dismiss.
Right, and that worked.
That's,
When I had it checked,
yep,
I could enter it on the keyboard, but then the enter didn't work.
yeah, the enter key wouldn't work at all, so it wasn't intercepting the return key from the keyboard. That actually seems kind of like a bug with this with the simulator. Let me try it on mine. Except first I got to enable it. 16. I'm just trying a different format.
Actually, it's just the enter on the number pad that's not working. The enter on the keyboard does work.
Okay, so if I go, I'll try to duplicate what you're doing here. So if I go to hardware, keyboard, and then I check this.
Yep.
All right, then I come in here and I delete this and I go 12, 20, 14, hit enter. Okay, so it did that,
Do you use which enter?
just the return key.
On the
The
keyboard.
return on the.
Yeah, the one on the number pad is not, it's not going to recognize that key over there
Okay,
unless you map it. And so,
that's what I was hitting.
Oh.
So that wasn't working.
okay, so the last thing I wanted to do on this view controller was in the text field, I want to set a clear button. And over here in the text field properties, about midway down, is a clear button option. I want to change that from never appears to is always visible. So they can always just go in and clear the text out anytime they want. And then it'll create that little X that you see inside the edit box, like on a lot of screens.
Like your text field?
You want it appears while editing or appears?
Always.
Always visible, okay.
Except I'm not seeing it. That's kind of weird.
That they're kind of supposed to do.
That makes what visible all the time?
Well, it's supposed to have a little X that shows up inside the date box. Oh, okay. That's weird because I said it was always visible, but it didn't actually show up until I typed something.
Kind of makes sense, you can't really clear nothing.
True. But if it's always visible, it'll just always be visible. But anyway,
You're thinking too much.
all right. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and start on our second view controller.
Kind of in trouble tonight. Tonight's my brother's 21st birthday.
Oh, yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go.
He's mentally prepared.
I would think that just like being unconscious would be mentally preparing.
I would rather just be asleep. Yes.
So you guys going out on the town?
Yeah, something like that. I gotta try to figure something out. Again, my dad is retired. I'm retired now, so
Oh.
At this point,
he
he
might
might
be out with him already.
Yeah.
Getting the training wheels off.
They got the head start, yeah.
Right. So I might catch up with him at one of the bars around here, either downtown or on the east side.
Yeah.
East side, closer towards our house. You know, give him a beer or something.
Yeah.
Say happy birthday.
21.
Yeah, I remember actually, I lied. I don't remember my 21st.
I definitely don't remember mine. One, it was a long time ago. And two, yeah, I don't recall what actually happened that night.
Well, when I turned 21, I was the oldest one there, so I didn't have any of my friends go with me. So there was me and my dad. You know, we started off with the day of, fishing. And when I say fishing, I mean bottle bassing.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, we're hopping down from here to there to the other place. And I just remember waking up in my bed going,
I woke up in my car on my 21st
it's tomorrow.
birthday.
Cool. All right, well, have fun.
Yeah, I'm not leaving.
Oh, okay. I thought you were.
Saturday, yeah.
No,
Saturday,
I
Super Bowl
still need to
weekend.
get this
Yeah.
done.
That's on Tuesday,
no.
So I ditched class.
We only had 2 sign-ups so far,
I
correct?
drink
Yep.
every car.
Okay, so don't freak out yet. Because I'm still working on my independent study and I need to try to finish up these 2 here. So, trying to figure out, mentally prepare myself. So that
Well, you
way-
got some time, but don't wait too much longer because they'll get harder soon.
I know. I will see if I can get everything
Not really,
submitted
must
to
have
you by
rolled on
this week.
weekend.
Sure.
It was, it's January.
And if not, then I might